This is Duke University.
Please help me in welcome Michael Dworkin to the stage.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. It's nice to see some people that I've seen before, which is always a pleasure, but it's even more important to see some people I haven't seen before, because this field definitely needs people, blood, energy, and ideas that build upon and go beyond where we've gotten so far. I want to take a minute, and I'll really make it a minute, to say something about Vermont law, which leads into the general topic. Vermont law over the last decade has probably put more people at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission than any other school. It's probably put more people at EPA than any other law school. It's probably put more people into state utility commissions than any other law school. And all of that sounds regulatory and governmental, so I might mention we've put at least a few people into traditional utilities and one heck of a lot of people into emerging alternative non-vertically integrated utilities. The new model is full of 28-year-olds and 30-year-olds that we've been churning out for a decade. In that realm, there's a lot that we do based on some of the things I did as 17 years as a judge and regulator and 4 years building a small business, which are technical, some things that are economic, some things that are legal. But one thing that we've just begun to get a handle on is a question that was always lurking over my shoulder while I was sitting in a big brown chair with brass buttons and flags, which is, what is justice? What is the right thing to do? What is reality? So that it's nice to know that we get it right when we figure out how many milligrams per liter of mercury should be allowed in a waste stream. It's nice to know that we're technically correct when we give people the ability to talk about transmission reliability in terms of normal minus one contingency, normal minus one contingency plus another one within a half an hour, normal minus two contingencies. Those kinds of things are vital. Cost allocation, what do we do when we've got one state that's part of a multi-state pool, and this year our state spent $1 billion to help other people outside the state in terms of reliability. But a year ago, they spent $5 billion and they want us to pay a share of it. How do you do those cost calculations? Those pieces are there, and I found myself in class asking the same question I used to ask in my last few years as a regulator, which was, what is right? What is justice? And those are not dodgeable questions for a couple of reasons. One is because the statute says we have to come up with decisions that are, quote, just and reasonable. Another is because over the courthouse door it says, equal justice under law. Another is that if we want to recruit people to come and work with us, they work better when they care, when they feel right about their work, when they've got some sense of zeal and personal contribution. The recruitment question that we heard 20 minutes ago is really a vital question for anybody that's building an institution for the future. So the need to think about what is justice is really important. I was lucky enough to have, as a deputy for a while, a guy named Benjamin Sovacool, with whom I wrote a book called Global Energy Justice. And symbolically, it's interesting to think about the title. Ben and I disagreed about some things. I don't mean the title, I mean the cover. I wanted to have a consensus-oriented cover. He wanted to have a conflict-oriented cover. I'm a little more sympathetic to nuclear than he is. We differed, and we came together in what the publisher thought would sell best. But I do want you to know that it reflects a serious effort to try to ask some questions that I think we all can benefit from. And the biggest part of this, I'm going to say before I move into the next slide, is this. It is possible to have a serious, productive, meaningful conversation about justice. In general, those conversations are rare. And they're rare for a couple of reasons. It's not that people don't care about it, but sometimes they don't think about it. But more often it's rare because it's both hard and soft. It's hard. You need to master a new vocabulary. You need to open yourself to experiences that go beyond your personal life. It's also soft because people think it's not result determinative. You can talk about it a long time, but it doesn't yield a decision. I want to suggest both of those are wrong. You can master a vocabulary. It goes back a couple thousand years, but it's active and live and real for ethical debate about morality. And you can get it to where it leads you to decisions that 90% of people will agree with. Maybe everybody except the litigant that loses that case. This is where we usually start. Quantitative cost-benefit analysis, which philosophically draws from what Jeremy Bentham used to call the utilitarian model. And that's not where we usually end, but it is implied in it that this is a technical decision, not a moral one. And as I say, I hope it's pretty clear, that assumption is wrong. There are moral judgments built into the decisions that we make about cost-benefit analysis. We spent the entire book, and we could spend a long time if we had it, giving examples of it. I'll give a few. But at the moment, I'm going to stick with the assertion because we don't have time for the complete demonstration. And I want to add that the assertion that there are moral issues woven into our technical analysis is not a brilliant insight that I suddenly had. It's something that people have worried about for 2 centuries or more. The Malthus quote is up there. The science of distribution of resources bears a nearer resemblance to morals and politics than to mathematics alone. That was not a blithe throwaway comment. It was based upon a lifetime of work and experience in trying to get there. And our choice of it reflected the reality of what we think we've worked with. This is a picture that most of you have probably seen in some form or another. It's 580 or so pictures taken at different times to get a clear night and woven together. It shows the lights on the Earth as of a little over a decade ago. And it implies, or you might think, that this is energy use or electric use, but in fact, there's 2 major deficiencies in this picture. One is that it doesn't show all the energy that's going into anything other than lighting. So transportation doesn't show up. Anchovy fishing off the coast of Peru doesn't show up. The other one, which is a bigger issue, is that it doesn't show the humanity, the billion of people who are going to bed tonight without electricity, probably as many as there have ever been in the history of the planet. It doesn't show the other billion that are going to bed with just enough electricity to pump water for about 2 hours, turn on the radio and listen to the governmental broadcast, tell you what to think, and then get turned off. So this is a very partial image. This is our reality in the mindset we have of who we talk to, where do we draw our graduate students, who do we work with, but it's not humanity. It is deeply deficient. And the first thing to suggest is that our sense of humanity and our sense of justice has to go beyond just what we grew up with and people that are easy to talk to. I want to raise a tension that raises, of course. Right now, there's a little over 7 billion people in the world. A little over 1 billion have pretty well, heavy degree of energy use. But there's 5 to 5.5 billion people that have less than 5,000 kilowatt hours per year on that. If we brought everybody up to that level, it would mean doubling the kind of electric demand that our system was built for. If we have population growth and a pitch to 5,000 for everybody, then we're close to tripling it. If we have population growth and we move to 10,000 kilowatt hours per year, then we have 5 times the electric demand that our system was founded on. Now that would be a challenge, but we actually know how to raise that kind of capex if we needed to. We could raise the money in terms of capital. We know how to do it reliably if we throw enough capital at it. What we don't know is how to do it in a way that's environmentally sustainable. In particular, if we've got a buffering capacity for the planet that it can absorb 1/5 of what's being emitted in terms of carbon right now, and then we try to imagine 5 times the energy system in a carbon-based system, there are some equations that do not have a solution. This is not where engineering classes usually go, but this is where engineering classes should go. You have to recognize that some things are a null set. And that level of population, that level of usage is very, very high. Here I want to suggest something which is important. We are redeveloping this. It'll be published next April. But the idea is that if you are using less than 4,000 kilowatt hours per capita, you probably need a lot more to do well on the Human Development Index. If you're using over 4 to 6, you might want some more. There's some correlation. Beyond that, there's almost no correlation between any of the indices, like mortality, infant mortality, overall mortality, life expectancy, women in the workforce. Beyond this level, we need to move forward into thinking about using the energy efficiently. And the capabilities are there. For the last decade, US energy demand has been close to flat on that before the recession, during the recession, and following the recession. We're going to suggest that there are people who've actually had to make decisions. For example, in the '03 blackout, as the Midwest began to ripple and it came east, people in New England made a decision to cut the system off and to pay higher energy costs for disconnecting so they'd be beyond it. But earlier, there had been a decision point when people in Ohio made a decision by inaction. They could have dropped Cleveland or they could have dropped Cincinnati if they'd made a serious decision to cut off power immediately with no notice for 2 million people. They could have kept 50 million people from having a 4-day outage. What's the right decision there? Is it just a matter of looking at Benthamite cost-benefit analysis? 10% probability of 50 million people times 4 days is greater or not greater than 2 million times 100% times immediate? That's one way to look at it. But there's plenty of other ways to look at this. Aristotle offers a weird version where you look at what is virtue, which cities are worth more. We've got plenty of other applications where we move forward into modern demonstrations about where do we get a serious discussion about right, virtue, and 3 questions that have to be asked time after time. What is reality? Lawyers call this, what are the facts? What is justice? This is our decision rule. And lawyers would call it, what is the law? And what is to be done? What's our action plan? A serious look at classical ethics and philosophy will move you into these 3 questions again and again. What is reality? What is justice? And what is to be done? And there is literature, there is analysis, there's a capability to pay attention to these topics and bring you forward. And it's something that can and should be added to an engineering and public policy program, a technical analysis, a governmental program, and any utility or non-utility company that wants to present itself as part of a future where it draws people in, pulls them together, and builds institutions that last. That's what I wanted to say. I'm going to pass it to Brian. You can flip through the slides that I'm not going to use today, and it's yours.